Investing for your kids, 529 plans or brokerage accounts, or what other options are available. In this video, we're going to briefly break down the difference between the two popular options between a brokerage account or a 529 plan. And it really just depends on what your goals are for your children and what these funds are ultimately going to be used for in the future. First up, let's talk about your brokerage account. This is like your all-purpose investment account. Think of it like a Swiss Army knife. Anybody can set one up. You don't have to earn a certain amount. There are no contribution limits to them. There's no minimum amount that you can start contributing. And they make a great option for children, depending on what you plan to use the money for in the future. So why might you consider this type of account for your kids? Well, first of all, if your children are under the age of 18, they technically can't be set up in their name. They have to be set up either in one of the parents' names or, like we do for most clients, set up as a joint account. Number one, flexibility. So within the brokerage account, you can invest in just about anything you like. You can invest in mutual funds, you can invest in ETFs, individual stocks, bonds, cryptocurrencies, real estate investment trusts or REITs. So the possibilities are really endless, which can be a positive investment experience for some, but can also be a detriment to others with all the different options that are available. So this type of flexibility actually allows your child to explore different investment options and make the investment account a little bit of fun. What we do with some clients is we'll invest the brokerage account into broadly diversified ETFs, maybe a couple individual stocks, but then we'll get the child involved in the investment selection process and ask them what their favorite company is. And this gets them involved in the process to, learn how stocks work, ownership of companies, investment options. We've had some children pick Disney because they love going to the theme parks and they love the movies. We've had others pick Under Armour or Nike. My suggestion is don't make it too much of the portfolio, not too heavily weighted into one individual stock. But if it's 5 to 10% of their overall investment allocation, it makes it a little fun. Okay, number two, control and ownership. So you, as the parent, can actually control and own the brokerage account. And the ownership doesn't have to be transferred over to the child at a certain age. You can hold on to it in perpetuity, or you can transfer over the ownership of the account when you feel that your child is financially responsible enough to manage these types of accounts. There are some accounts where the ownership of the account has to be transferred over to the child once they reach the age of majority. In some states it could be 18, in other states it could be 21. There are pros to cons to that. In most people's eyes, and in mine in particular, it can be a detriment to the child to hand over $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over to them at the age of 18, leading to what we all know may be questionable decisions. And so because of that, the funds can be used at any point in the future for any reason at any time. So that's why maintaining ownership of the account, at least until they've proven that they're financially responsible, because the money can be used for any reason, it can be used for any reason. So that's where the flexibility comes into play. So if they want to use the money for a down payment on their first home, or buy a car, or pay off some of their student loans, or for a wedding, it can be used for literally anything. All right, so tax benefits. Let's talk about something that doesn't get talked about enough. So with brokerage accounts, there are short-term capital gains and there are long-term capital gains. In short, if you buy and sell a security and there is a gain and you sell it within 12 months, you pay short-term capital gains rates, which are the rates very similar to your federal income rates. If you buy a security and sell it after 12 months, you're paying long-term capital gains rates, which are for most people are roughly half, but there are certain income thresholds to pay the more favorable long-term capital gains rates. If you are single and your earned income is less than $47,000, you pay no long-term capital gains rates. And if you're married, it's double that. So if you're single, if your child is 24 years old and they're single and they're just getting out of college and they want to sell some of these gains within the brokerage account, assuming there are gains, they may not pay any capital gains rates as long as their income is less than $47,000 a year. So if there are $30,000 worth of gains, long-term gains within the brokerage account, and they're not working yet, or they're working half the year because maybe they just graduate and they get a job in the fall and they've only got a couple months of income before the end of the year, and they need the funds for some reason, they could potentially sell this without paying any capital gains. Here's the kicker. The ownership of the brokerage account has to be in the child's name, assuming they're over the age of 18, to benefit from those capital gains rates. If the parents are making more than $94,000 a year and they're married, filed jointly, then they could potentially be paying long-term capital gains rates depending on how much is actually being sold. So you want to be careful with that. Okay, number 4, long-term growth. So especially if your child is young, we're talking about years of compounded interest. And just for example, if your child is, say, 5 years old and you are investing for 20 years, so from 5 to 25, and you invested $5,000 a year, and you earned an average rate of return of 8%, for 20 years, your projected balance would be roughly $228,000. So by the time they're 28 years old, you've got $228,000 in this account, assuming those variables I just mentioned. That's why ownership is so important, and that's why ownership should maintain in the parent's name and not be forced in the child's name. I know at 25 years old, you handed me an account, my parents handed me an account with $228,000. Decisions would be made. That money would have been gone in 6 months, I guarantee it. All right, now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the 529 plan, which are geared and earmarked for education only. They're a little bit more specialized. So here are the benefits and here are some potential drawbacks. One of the standout benefits of the 529 plan are the tax benefits associated with them. They're made with after-tax contributions, and in some states you may get a deduction on your contributions. For example, in New York State, if you're single, you're allowed up to a $5,000 deduction. If you're married, filed jointly, you're allowed up to a $10,000 New York State deduction on those contributions. The growth is tax-free, and when you withdraw money in the future, as long as it's used for qualified education expenses, they are 100% tax-free. These education expenses include tuition, room and board, and even some K through 12 expenses. And for you super savers and high earners out there, you can actually super fund your 529 by taking 5 years worth of contributions up to the gift tax exclusion, which is $18,000 a year. So you could take $18,000 times 5 years, which is $90,000, and make that contribution in 1 year and get a deduction. I think a 529 plan is a great option for parents who know that their child is going to go to college. They want them to go to college. This provides them an opportunity to save into an account that's triple tax-free. Tax deduction going in, tax-free growth, tax-free withdrawals, as long as they're used for education expenses. The issue comes from if your child does not go to school, if they enlist in the military, if they start a business, for any particular reason, if they do not go to school, then this money can be withdrawn, but you'll have to pay taxes on the gains and pay a penalty. It just provides a little bit less flexibility than the brokerage account because it has to be used specifically for college education. Think of it like a hammer. A hammer is great at hammering nails, but it's not great at cutting paper. It's the same idea with a 529. So which one should you choose? I think it really all depends. If the goal is to save specifically for college, the 529 plan is a great idea. If the goal is to save and invest for your child for college education, but also provide an account that they could use for other things and provide a little bit more flexibility, I think the brokerage account might make sense for you to consider. And remember, there's no one size fits all here. Everyone's situation is a little bit different. What might make sense for one family to set up a 529 and fund might make sense to set up a brokerage account for another family. Speak with a professional to see which account might fit your needs